Good morning, dear viewer. Welcome to UBC, and this is Pan-African Friday. Amande Akol Amazima stepping in for Jagenda Semakula Ziksoka. And today we are looking at demystifying the colonial borders. This, as of course, there is a border row between Somalia and Kenya, but of course we've also seen these rows, border conflicts between many African states. We had one with Kenya that is quarreling over just a rock in Lake Victoria, that is Mijingo, and we've also seen Uganda and South Sudan. So there have always been these kind of border conflicts, and today we look at how do we really demystify these colonial borders, because in any case these are borders that were drawn in 1885 in Berlin, and they ended up enfranchising the African people, where you find that one particular tribe, one particular group of people belongs to two actually countries, especially those at the border areas. Now today with me in studio on my immediate left is my usual panelist, that is Mututa. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, next to Mututa we have a Pan-African, a lawyer, and also a politician. He actually was a candidate for Ruchiga in the last elections on the FDC ticket.
Correct.
Stephen Navy, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes, next to Stephen is an environmentalist, a lawyer, and also a politician, the vice president of the political party of Uganda, Mr. Robert Tumwesije, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, now straight to the topic. When we look at demystifying the borders of Africa, demystifying the borders of Africa, because we still have a problem here on the continent, that you find a particular group of people belonging to two or more countries. For example, we have the Maasai in Kenya. The Maasai land stretches from just outside Nairobi up to Arusha. And when you reach Namanga, there is a border, so implying that the same people find themselves in two countries. Now, the same thing with the Western Uganda. Of course, you'll find the people in Kasese. They have their kids that side. The same thing that is in Zombo, Nebi, and Pakwash. They have a larger part of their group, of their tribe is the other side in Congo. We have the Acholi in northern Uganda and Acholi in southern Sudan. So we begin with Mtuta. How do we demystify these borders so that we can see Africa coming together to work for its progress?
Yeah, thank you, Akol, and thank you for the viewers following us this morning. Now, when we talk about these borders, it sounds easy for one to say, well, because there are Wagisu in Uganda and also Wagisu in Kenya, it is very easy that people, much as their borders, people can interact. In fact, in one of the meetings, I told the people of Kenya that for us, the border between us is the water, Luakaka River. And I said, Luakaka River is just there as a sign that when you are moving from one area to the other, you are tired, then you get there, you have maybe to refresh, you clean your face or you drink, and then you proceed. But doesn't have to be a big demarcation. Now, saying that is very easy, but it's not as easy as we look at it. For me, who has had an experience with these borders, because I think I have a community, I have relatives who are staying in Kenya, and I have relatives who are staying in Uganda. I have grown up in Kenya, and I've grown up in Uganda. So I have seen what happens when we talk of these borders as an experience. Now, leaders can talk about it. People can talk about it. And indeed, when you look at it, in essence, that the people are free to interact, more freer to interact than the leaders. Because I can cross to the next country and do what I want and come back. But a leader cannot do that. because there's a lot of protocol that is supposed to be involved. Much as in 1999, the people, for example, the East African region, a treaty was signed that will eventually culminate into the other customs union, the free trade, the free movement of people, the monetary union. But you realize these things are not as easy as we speak. For example, if you look at the last time I went to Kenya, because as of now we have the free trade, the free movement of people within the East Africa, that when I'm crossing from Uganda to Kenya or Tanzania, I just need to show my ID card.
National ID.
Yes. And
though there's still a problem on the Tanzanian side.
Not only in Tanzania side, because even the last time I crossed to Kenya, I was given a temporary pass. Now, under the common movement, and again we are modeling the European Union. Now, in the European Union, there is what they called abolition of internal borders. In other words, the borders between the countries that are involved in the treaty are dealt away with. That a citizen of that area will move from one point to the other, from one country to the other, without restrictions. A person who has gotten a Schengen visa as a visitor temporarily in that area will move,
that region of
exactly,
Europe,
will move freely from either Germany, will go to France, will freely. Now, for us, we have not even gotten that far. For the simple reason that when I was crossing to Kenya, I was given a pass. And this pass was to last for 7 days. Now, what happens if the 7 days elapse and I'm still in Kenya? This is where now we revert to the Maganyakos thing, that you are illegally stepping on the land. Now, that means that even with the East African Treaty, we are not free to move within the borders within East Africa. And what does that mean? East Africa alone has about 195 million people, population, as of now. When you look at 195 people as a population, this population is bigger than the 9 countries of the Western Europe added together. It means that we have a big market of 195 million. But we can now not make use of the 195 million because of the restrictions.
You can hold it there. Yes, Stephen, you come from Ruchiga borders, Rwanda.
Correct.
We've also seen that, of course, the people in Ruchiga and the people in Rwanda are cousins, if I can use that. But now let's look at how do we demystify these borders for the good of the Mwananchi.
Thank you very much, my brother, Akor. We need to understand, you talked about the Berlin Conference in 1885. When the Berlin Conference was held, the powers that be, Germany, Great Britain, France, their interest was not you, the Wananchi. Their interest was about the economy. Because why they came to Africa was basically to exploit African resources. They came to exploit, not to develop you as a person. They did not think about nationhood or citizenship as a common standard when they were partitioning Africa. In fact, at that time, King Leopold II, he held the whole of Congo as his personal property. And it is in 1885 that he later named it the independent state of Congo. But during the Berlin Conference, the other powers actually gave Congo as a personal property to Leopold II. He could exploit it the way he wanted. He was not answerable to anyone. So primarily, at that time, actually because the Berlin Conference becomes the yardstick in a subdivision of Africa, the Germans came up with the effective occupation. They say, if we are going to give you Uganda, you must effectively occupy every part of Uganda. The British were opposed actually at the beginning to that idea. They said, we can control the whole of Africa from the coast. They have given you, yes, you are taking this part, but you can even administer the whole of your coast, your territory, without necessarily going there. Leopold, it must be understood, he colonized the whole of Congo as his personal property, but they never even went there up to 1908, when it was taken over by Belgium. So what am I trying to say? At the time of independence, African countries still behaved like the colonial masters. They did not sit down and say, because they had an opportunity, I think in 1963, when they met in Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere and other patriots at that time. Kwame Nkrumah was of the view, let us unite Africa as one state. The other people were saying, no, we still need to feel power. The one in Tanzania still wants to know that this is my area. The one
of course, there are two schools of thought.
Yes.
Nyerere's school of thought that let us unite Africa through regional
gradually. Yes.
Through regional blocks.
Yes.
Then Nkrumah was of the no. Let us do it now. Let us just surrender our independence and form a united
Ultimately,
yes.
both schools of thoughts failed, because with the East Africa community, you know, it failed, and it failed miserably because of selfishness of our own leaders. And now let's come back to Ruchiga, which you talked about, where I come from, because actually from my home, on a bicycle, I can ride on a bicycle 16 minutes. I am at the border. Actually, we used to sell bananas. You put 5 matoke and you ride to Rwanda. What is happening is that when you open your eyes, physical eyes, you may not necessarily see the physical boundary, because like you see the Poland and the Belarus, there is that conflict because there is that perimeter wall. For us, is imaginary. And you see, that is the myopic thinking of African leaders, that you can keep people in a cup without. We dig, the people in Kamwezi Gwamatunguru dig in some parts of Rwanda, and the people in Uganda dig in Uganda.
In other words, they have gardens.
They have gardens.
This side, yeah.
People in Katuna, they dig in Rwanda. People in Rwanda dig in Uganda. What's happening is that there is that insecurity of African leaders. When they own up something, they want to hold it so dearly to themselves. But in the long run, there is a price they pay. If you go to Katuna right now, it's like a ghost town. Yet previously, it was thriving. Life at night was all over. The economic activities, people were exchanging money. There was life. Kabale town was developing. But you see, up to date, no one has honestly, and I'm using the word honestly very seriously, come up between our leaders, Ndugu Paulo Kagame and His Excellency the President of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. No one has honestly come to explain to the people of Uganda, and more so the people of Ruchiga and the people of Kabale and Rwanda, why the borders are still closed. They are still closed because of the, I would believe, the leaders themselves feel insecure, and unfortunately the people are suffering. In the long run, these border conflicts, territorial conflicts, you've talked about Mengino in Lake Victoria.
Yeah, Mijingo in Lake Victoria.
Yes. You as a Ugandan, it is in your best interest that both Uganda and Kenya cooperate, okay, for the benefit of their people. It is in the best interest that the people of Nigeria and the people of Cameroon cooperate, because you remember in 1981, they almost went to war over a peninsula, that vast land. They were asking themselves, the Cameroonians want it, the Nigerians want it. But you see, at the end of the day, it is the Nigerian people and the Cameroonian people who are sharing that border who were suffering. You go to South Africa and Namibia, there is that Orange River. Because South Africa has financial man, so they think they can even...
Financial and military.
Yes, they think they can just cross over and take over a next part of Namibia. Actually, it is in 2020 when the Namibian parliament was up in arms. You understand? So, it is very important at the end of the day you already have that imaginary boundary of Uganda. I'm saying imaginary again very carefully. There is somebody in Kenya, you talked about Kenya very dearly. He says in the morning, at night I sleep in Kenya, in the morning I have breakfast in Uganda, because his house is built in such a way that one part seems to be in Uganda, the other part seems to be
in Kenya.
Now, when you talk about the East African community as a regional grouping, you talk about East African community, then you talk about South Sudan. When you're going to South Sudan, immediately you, from Nimuli, you reach at the border and you cross over. The people who, when you cross over, the people who are there, they, even when you have Ugandan shillings, they accept it. Okay?
No. Actually, some schools in South Sudan are using the Ugandan curriculum.
But you see,
they even sit for UNEB exams. Yes.
So if a Ugandan now moves away from that imaginary border, of course with the Nimule, and of course Uganda is a little more developed, when you cross over, the atmosphere changes, the reception, the people, the environment changes. But you see, that environment has been created by politics. Politics which has nothing to do with people's development, people's needs. My view would be Africa is a continent of mostly predominantly black people. Saying this is not saying that I don't recognize that there are other people of other colors who are in Africa. But because of leadership problems, you got Congo. You got Congo. When you go to Congo, you may feel that there is no semblance of a government. And their problems stem from the Berlin Conference, where the powers, the other countries accepted Leopold to do as he felt. Because with effective occupation, you had to have a police that would create law and order. People
you had to have a machinery that would help you govern that place.
Up to now, no leader in Congo has been able to effectively control the entire of Congo.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Yes, Robert, let's look at your take on this. How do we demystify these borders? You know, I had a friend, a Tanzanian friend actually, who lives in the US, says that every other time he's flying back home, he comes from Kagera. He says every other time he's flying back home, he actually uses Entebbe, not Dar es Salaam, because from Entebbe to the home here in Bukoba, it is nearer. Now, there are other people who come actually from your part of Ruchiga. When they are flying home, maybe from Europe, maybe from any other part of the continent, they prefer Kanombe Airport than Entebbe because it is nearer. So, and that is what now we're looking at, that you don't need, because you're Ugandan, you should fly to Entebbe and then back to Ruchiga, yet you can use Kanombe. Because you're Tanzanian, you don't need to fly to Dar es Salaam, yet you can use Entebbe, and that very day, you are in Bukoba. Yes, Robert.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. As I said, my name is Robert Tumwesije Baganda. I'm currently coordinating Publish What You Pay Uganda, which is looking at the transparency and accountability in the extractive sector. So I have the experience on the resources point of view, because as the council said, when they were partitioning Africa, they were doing actually basing on the resources, because the rush to get territories, colonies in Africa was based on resources, because Europe wanted raw materials to feed their industries. So when there were a rush to come to Africa, they were looking at which country has resources. I want to give you an example of when the British came to Uganda, and you know how they developed Uganda. Uganda was developed as a protectorate, but they never wanted it to come directly. They wanted to use indirect rule. And for example, I'm told when the British, for example, came to Chigezi, and they looked at the beauty of the mountains, they rushed very fast to Lake Kivu, and they wanted to take all the heroes, those heroes of Rwanda and Burundi, to be part of Uganda, but the Belgians were already there. So I'm told the Romans went to war. So that war was the war of resources, looking at how peculiar that area is, the scenery, the natural resources. The Africa was divided because these countries wanted resources. So they never put into consideration anything like the issue of ethnicity, the issue of tribes. For example, as you said, many of our relatives, me, I come from Kisoro, the border of DRC. Many of our relatives are in DRC. Many of our relatives are in Rwanda. Now in Tanzania, the whole of that part near Uganda, we speak the same language. If you hear what Saida Karol is singing, you can understand. So the whole of that area, they are our people.
That is Kagera region?
Yes, the Kagera region. You are talking of Kenya. All those people are ours. We are talking of South Sudan. And when you look, for example, the Bantu tribe, the Bantu group, those who use the word in two stretches up to Southern Africa. And for us, when you even go to West Africa, you go to Nigeria, you go to Cameroon, all those areas, the people, we are really the same. You look at a man, you say that this one is a real Muchiga. And some of the words, even in West Africa, they are the same. You hear the names like Chimamanda, in Cameroon, the Yaounde, all those, we are the same people. So when they were dividing Africa, they never actually put into consideration the aspect that we are one, and we are divided into the Francophone, the Anglophone. Here, the Belgium we are talking about. So people in Africa now want to speak French, they want to speak English, they want to speak Portuguese. I was in a meeting and the people from Mozambique were saying that now we also want the Portuguese to be recognized. They said, now why don't we look for an African language? But even then, when you have those languages now, why don't we look at now the issue of demystifying the borders?
Well, thank you very much, Robert. We are going in for a break, and when we come back, we shall be having. Well, I'm told that, of course, we're not having a break. Yes, still proceed. But later in the show, we shall actually be bringing a clip by President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, also talking about the demystifying of the borders and how the borders have actually affected the smooth running of society. Yes, that is President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Yes, and at one of the meetings, actually, he was really talking about the borders. And in his explanation, he was really giving an example of the Aoris, the Agri-Aori, whereby we saw that we had Agri-Aori Muda Aori in Kenya as the vice president, and we also had Agri-Aori this time, this side, as also a minister of ICT. And they were MPs, of course, the other side, Finyula, which is in the other side of Kenya, and this one was Samia Bugwe, which was also this side of Uganda. So you can imagine siblings, but they divided on different sides of the region. Then he was also talking about the Maasai. Of course, you find that the Maasai are the same people. Now, why would a Maasai actually need a pass when he's going to graze his cows from Kajiado, maybe that part of Arusha? Or maybe when he's visiting his uncle from Arusha coming to, why do they need a pass? Oh, the same as Mtuta really put it, why would Mgisu need a pass when he's visiting his fellow Luhya, when you're going to Bungoma? Why really do you need a pass? So those are some of the issues that President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was raising. Yes, Robert,
yes,
you're still making
I was
point.
Continuing on the point of the natural resources. The wars in Africa are based on the wars that we have been having since independence are based on that partition of Africa, which was done in the wrong way. And now we are fighting, as we are talking about the DRC. You know, the wars in DRC, people don't want DRC to stabilize because there are people there stealing the minerals. And the imperialists we are talking about, the Europeans, the Americans, the Chinese, they don't want us to unite. That's why you see the Chinese calling a meeting for African leaders. Now UK recently, when it broke away from the European Union, now UK particularly want to call the African leaders, America want to call the African leaders. Now you find they don't want us to unite. Now this is a time when we really need to think I want to give an example now, the particular example in Uganda. When, for example, we are building the pipeline. You see, now you cannot sell the oil of Uganda without passing through Tanzania. Now that's why we are building a pipeline from Hoima up to Tanga. Now, how do we develop Africa when we have these physical borders? You cannot sell your products because you are passing through another country. My colleague was talking about the Europe, where, like when you are in Switzerland and you are crossing to France, there is no border. You don't find a border because people, they have that second visa. Now, why should we have that physical border at Katuna, at Maraba? Those borders should exist to exist. So we need really, now I think the African leaders, I don't know, that's why last time I was proposing that we need a non-state actors conference, because the leaders now, I think they are becoming selfish. Well, we need to come up with one voice, and these physical borders go away. Otherwise, there is no way Africa is going to develop when these physical borders are still existing.
Well, I think you are, Robert. Yes, back to Mtuta, of course, and let's look at the Horn of Africa. When you look at the Horn of Africa, Somalia, you look at Djibouti, you look at Eritrea, you look at Ethiopia, and that part of northern Kenya, we have the Somali community. Now, why would a Somali in northern Kenya, would perhaps they're visiting their cousin in Somalia or in Djibouti or in Eritrea or in Ethiopia, why do they need a visa?
Again, using the example that President Uhuru gave of their worries, that you find a family divided into two. Now, when you look at the Horn of Africa, it's exactly from that experience that you have people, a community which is split by
and spread all over.
Yes, but because of these imaginary borders, these people cannot trade. These people cannot even visit each other because legally, again, even as we talk of the East African community, the colleagues, lawyers are here will help me on that. But the East African community can also have issues. Okay, taking the example of the Aworis, that if Awori, the father of the two Aworis, because at one point you remember, Awori, as the vice president of Kenya,
Modi Awori.
Yes, Modi Awori was at any point would become the president of Kenya at that time, and Awori, the younger brother was
a presidential candidate.
Yes, and, so would have at one given point would have had two presidents
from the same family,
but split along this imaginary border. But as it is, you also know that, and I was reading some legal opinion by the Attorney General here over something similar, said if the two Awori, if the Awori father called a meeting and sat in a house in Kenya, in the wife who was staying in Kenya, and decided who will be the heir of the family, and that instrument, that decision was brought in a Ugandan court, could have been disputed. Why? Because it was made in a foreign country. And if Awori realized one morning that the wife in Uganda actually didn't have sugar, and picked a kilo of sugar from the wife in Kenya, and when he was crossing his compound, Uganda Revenue Authority could have intercepted him.
That is smuggling.
As smuggling.
As a smuggler.
You see? Now, so what I'm saying is that while we are talking about this cooperation, we also need to look at our constitutions. How easy are people able to do the things that we want them to do without necessarily having this because our constitution of Uganda, which gives this country its sovereignty and its powers to exist, there are certain things that cannot be done even in a larger society of the East Africa, because the Constitution of East Africa, the Treaty of East Africa, is still subordinate to the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Now, even if it allows that freedom of movement, it is still subject to what the Constitution of this country would decide. So, and these are not what they call my land friends here. They call they say what they use for other legislation that affects the mother legislation. So, what we're then seeing there is, as a result of that these people are, because of the colonialists knew that if these people were allowed, like Masai, as President Uhuru was saying, were a kingdom of their own. So, and you know, they were fighters.
Warriors.
They were strong warriors. So there was no way you could have allowed them to exist other than splitting them, so that there's one group the other side and this group this side, and this group could not come together without the authorities knowing why they were coming and what they were coming to do. So that has affected a lot in this continent of Africa, and unless the African leaders see this as one of the bottlenecks to our development, is going to take long. When you look at now what is happening in the Horn of Africa, that people are just identifying others as problems. You either belong to this group and the other group is a problem, or you belong to this country and the other country is a problem. Now, at individual levels, people intermarry. People go to same schools, because I've seen people come from Tanzania to Uganda, people come from Uganda to Kenya, and vice versa. People, you said in Sudan, people are paying even fees in Uganda currency.
Yeah, actually, even sitting for Uganda.
Exactly, which shows that people can easily interact. But the problem is the powers. Now, are we enforcing, again, taking the example of European Union, other than, besides abolishing the internal borders, they have enhanced security at the borders outside the region, that when you have a problem in one country, the police in Kenya will pursue a suspect into Uganda and Sudan until they get that suspect. For now, for us, it may not be so. And maybe that's why the leaders are insisting on this border, so that the mechanism for protection for their people are enforced. But at the same time, when you because we normally talk about leaders, but you also realize that leaders are also prisoners in these borders. Because when you look at the cost of policing, of protecting these borders, who gains the benefits? Because we have to put their police, we have to put their army, and you know by our constitution that the army is to protect the borders of a country. Who is applying the protection for these borders? It is not African governments, not African people. It is someone who is supplying us the material to be able to secure our borders. And maybe whoever is supplying this knows that if we do away with these internal borders, there's a lot that they are going to miss in terms of money. So I think as we look at what can be done to demystify these borders, we also need to look at underlying factors why these borders are being enforced.
Well, I thank you very much. Yes, Stephen. Yes,
of course. Contribute to the issue of visas, because I don't want that to escape me. You see, my brother, in Africa, is what we call control. Leaders in Africa love. They don't actually like, they love control.
They love power.
They love power. And if you remove the borders, you've actually stripped them naked.
You know,
that's why,
assuming we really made it the way we do, we borrow it from European Union, does that stop one from being a president or prime minister, whatever? In
Africa, you see, at one time, you see, I was in elections in Ruchiga. If you called somebody and even spoke to him in a private, there is a public, but you've called somebody to whisper to his ear, that person would grow wings, because at that time he's very powerful. Unless we demystify that power that comes with leadership in Africa, the border is still there. But you see, we are talking about African borders. Let's come to Uganda. The Atesot know their boundary. Last night there was a conflict. There was the Prime Minister moved, I think, to northern Uganda, that the Bararo are leaving their parts and going to graze their cattle there. To them, that is their part, and it must be guarded jealously. And it comes with the power and authority. So that if you came, they would ask you, why are you here? Because you are interfering with certain set standards and patterns. If you go to Kenya, the president of Kenya, he's one of those people who will not mince with words. He's been clear and saying some tribes in Kenya have benefited unduly more than other tribes. And he came up with the BB, Building Bridges Initiative, with his brother Raila Odinga. He's trying to address historical injustices within the tribal setup. That means it came with a lot of sacrifice. Both parties had to sacrifice for the benefit of
the country.
Now, it comes back to African leaders. In 2018, they came up with the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Yeah, free trade zone. Free trade zone. Yes.
It is in words, basically, because we still are paying taxes when
and the irony is, at that time, the person was the chairman of African Union, and actually, even in his capital where it was launched, he's the person closing the borders.
Closing the borders. So that level of hypocrisy. Yes. That level of hypocrisy. So it requires stamina from serious leaders. You see, before President Gaddafi died, he came up with this grand idea of a seriously united African continent. You know how it ended. Those who tried to support him, you know how they were gagged. It is important that the African leaders sit down and realize one thing. We will recognize them and remember them for uplifting the standards of living over their people, but not for how long they have stayed in power. I will give you an example of Ivory Coast. When Bogba was the president.
Yeah, Bagbo, yes.
Yes. To him, Ivory Coast was his personal belonging. And that's why even after being defeated in an election, he couldn't see the power.
No, but also Alassane Ouattara is also doing the same.
You see, it is a disease. It is a disease.
Yes. That's why normally I tell people that this issue of how leaders in Africa behave is not, in fact, last time when we were discussing about, I think, one of the countries said, it is not the leaders per se, but
I think the
systems under which, because one comes in and behaves even worse than the president, and we have seen that happen.
Yeah, because like for example, Ouattara was ascended to power on, of course, saying that, look here, the people are being marginalized, the people who are personalizing the presidency, personalizing Ivory Coast, and of course the affairs, the politics in. But now when he eventually becomes president, he's now proving to be worse than
the predecessor.
Yes.
We say it is a system, yes, let the system be there, but the system is created by people. I am looking forward to a time when African leaders behave like African people. Because if you go from here and you go to any other continent and you meet a Nigerian and you meet a South African, you hug, you actually want that person to be your next social security. Do you know why? At that time, you're not recognizing that he's a Nigerian or he's a Cameroonian. You're recognizing he's an African who needs your support. So at that level, we don't have that hypocrisy. But I will tell you, the African leaders have become a huge problem. I was still telling you in the African Continental Free Trade Area. In 2019, September, it became effective. It started operating because 22 countries had already deposited their, they had signed to the African Free Trade Area. But right now, If you are going, I was saying, if you are exporting your goods to Kenya, they charge you taxes. If goods are coming from Kenya to Uganda, where is that freedom? They are good. Our African leaders have become good in talking than putting things into reality. Well, and it favors them. It favors them because they had rather keep the African person in Ichisoro, the African person in Nimri, the African person in Namibia, blinded by their own decisions. At the end of the day, they are staying longer in power. We need to change this. We need to bring new thoughts because as it stands, we have been betrayed by the African leaders more than the people have betrayed their own leaders.
Well,
on that,
yes.
I also believe that it is not actually the problem of the African leaders. It is the problem of the Africans. Because leaders grow from us. And we are the people who make the leaders to be who they are.
Really?
I have seen cases in Africa, of course, with the extremes. But you realize that sometimes the leaders will always be blamed. For example, before Gaddafi was killed, Gaddafi had created a country where at least everyone would be accommodated, would fit.
Would be proud
exactly.
of belong to that particular country. Yes.
But you also realize that the opposition, there was already growing opposition in Libya because I'm told Gaddafi will not allow the opposition to express themselves, to hold meetings, to do what all the things were being talked about. But to an ordinary person in Libya, I think was okay. Now, then you realize that when finally he's killed, a lot has happened.
Well, I want to thank you, Mututa. We are going in for a break, and we shall come back. When you come back, we shall go straight to Robert to look at the issue of nationality.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
It's Freaky Friday from Airtel. Buy or gift. Buy or give.
Get freaky too! Dial *149*10# to load a Freaky Friday bundle for you to enjoy the best offers on voice and data.
To buy a bundle for friends and family, dial *149*10*5#. Freaky Friday with Airtel. Buy or gift a bundle today. Dial *149*10# to get started. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Introducing the all-new Roofing's TMX 500C rebars with cut and bend services. Roofing's, strength of a nation.
It's the festive season and we love it. And that means it's time to celebrate with GoTV.
Come with me.
So get your GoCoder and GoTV value for 25,000 shillings to watch with the whole family. And if you're feeling extra festive, upgrade to our best package yet, GoTV Super.
Something to look forward to.
Download the My GoTV app for more information.
Super.
We all deserve a super festive season. And with GoTV, there's every reason to love it.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
You are not competitors. And I think the big mistake we have made is by making each other competitors. We are not competing. Our problem is that we are not working closer together to meet the demands that our people have. And as I was telling another gathering, you know, these borders, and I also mentioned to my brother, these borders that you create silos for yourselves amongst, you must always remember, are not your creation. These were creations of people outside of this continent who made these borders not to develop you, but to extract from you. Now that you want to develop yourself, we must start looking at these borders, and we must start removing the barriers that we have put, that have defined us in the past, and now hinder us from being the giant that we should be. I was telling my brother this morning the ridiculousness of our borders, that we in Kenya have a border demarcated with, on one side with Tanzania, where the people who live on the border are the Maasai community. They were a nation once upon a time. Now today, they are Kenyans, they are Tanzanians, and yet they are relatives, but they live on two sides of a border. This is not proper. I was telling him of another example. To our west, Lake Victoria, where again another boundary was drawn between Kenya and Uganda. And where at one particular moment in time, between 2005 and 2007, we had two brothers, same father, same mother. Those who come from polygamous families know what I'm talking about. But this particular one, the same father, same mother. But because their land was stretched across between Kenya and Uganda, one brother inherited land on the Ugandan side, the other brother inherited land on the Kenyan side. And between 2005 and 2007, we had one brother as the vice president of Kenya, and the other brother as the minister in charge of the presidency in Uganda. Now, I don't know whether you can find a much more ridiculous situation to explain the kind of position some of us find ourselves in. So these borders were not made for us. If we are going to become manufacturing giants, we need to do away with these borders. We need to see the African market as one. We need to be able to develop giants like Airbus, that makes components in the United Kingdom, that makes components in France and in other parts of Europe, but has become a global conglomerate. They didn't come together because they loved each other. We all know how they hate each other, we know. Yeah? But they've come together to survive. Africa must come together for us to survive. Survive and indeed prosper. I wish you all the very best. I am very excited that my brother has pushed this agenda of Kenya Airways and South African Airlines, and I am very hopeful that in the very near future, I shall be one of the first customers on a Pan-African flight that is owned by Africa and run by Africans. There's a story that says it's better to own a small piece of a big thing than a big piece of nothing. So I'm looking forward to our small piece in a big Pan-African airline. Thank you very much.
Well, that is President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta of Kenya. Of course, Pan-Africanism is actually the way to go. Now, Robert, of course, you've heard the president saying that Africans, we need to come together, whether we like it or not, for purposes of survival. is whether we love each other, whether we hate each other, but the fact that we need to survive together, we need to come together. And this reminds me of course, how politics has played a key role in dividing us and destroying us. Because in Africa, at a time we're having elections, it's when we know who is a nation and who is not. The other time in Zambia, you saw a man who had fought for their independence was being told that he's now from Malawi, is not from, is not a national. Alassane Ouattara, one of the reasons why he was disqualified from running the very first time before was that he was a Burkinabe, not an Ivorian. And now people are saying, but remember, he owns businesses. He owned businesses in Ivory Coast, that is in Abidjan. He at one time had become even the prime minister of that country, but because now he was contesting for presidency, now we're saying, look here, you're not an Ivorian, you are a Burkinabe. So we've actually seen these things every other time that there is election, saying, look here, no, you're not from this particular part of the continent. So it takes us back again to the issue of demystifying borders, not only for economic gains, but also for good governance as well. Yes, Robert.
I think I'm glad that this issue has come from the mouth of the serving president. So I think we need to take it from there. And I think the discussion now needs to take two shapes. One, we need to identify African leaders who are like-minded, who want a united Africa. That's one. But the other way we need to take is the civic. We need now to mobilize also Africans to begin discussing these issues so that we don't leave it only to the presidents. Because if actually this issue, if we become serious, it can take shape during our time. Because I'm looking at a time when Africa was colonized, I think from the 19th century, 100 years back, and up the time African states started getting independence from 1950s up to 1990s, when the last, I think, South Africa got independence from the apartheid regime. I'm thinking now we could now take it further and we begin discussing these issues seriously. Because the conflicts that are emerging in Africa, the coups that are happening in West Africa, in Mali, and now the conflict in Ethiopia, now those are signs that the African cannot stabilize when we are not one. Because as we are saying, these are the tribes which, a tribe even within a country like Uganda thinks that has been marginalized and it needs to come up. But we need actually to begin thinking about removing those borders so that we can stabilize Africa, we can stop fighting for these resources, we can, I can, for example, go easily to West Africa and stay there. One time I was in Ivory Coast, and what intrigued me was when I reached at the border, at the airport, they confiscated my passport. So they said the next day you have to come back to the immigration. So the next day I came back. I was with a Tanzanian colleague. So when I went there, we spent like 3 hours. So I was actually almost, I lost my cool, and the Tanzanian professor cooled me. He said, young man, cool down. But I said, now, how do you treat me? In Congo, if I'm to go to Congo now, I'm happy that Congo is joining East African community. But is that one still going to remain East African community? Because we used to run in school that the countries in East Africa are in the East African, in East Africa. Now, the Congo's wish to become a member of East Africa actually brings that discussion that now we need to become one. So is Cameroon also going to say that we are also going to become members of East Africa or Central African Republic? And then is that one going to still remain East African community? That's why we seriously need to look at what Nkrumah was saying. And we leave out what Ndugu, the late Mwalimu Nyerere was saying, that we need to develop blocks. We have tried to develop blocks for the last 50 years. It has not worked. So we need to develop Africa as one. And now there are two issues, there are two schools of thoughts that we need to take. We either take the European Union, where we still have presidents, or we take the America. the United States of America, where for them they had to make sure that America is united, and they have states where you have governors and then you have one president. And for me, I would wish that we take even the United States a concept where we have one president and these African states remain. Uganda remains as a state and we have a governor. Rwanda remains as a state and we have a governor. DRC remains as a state and we have a governor. And then we can move freely and develop Africa as one. This issue of saying that we have presidents who are too powerful. African presidents are the same. I'm sorry to say this. They rule their countries at their own homes. They are not accountable to anybody. They spend resources as they wish. They don't respect the population. But for me, I believe that the problem is also with us Africans. Because it is only one person ruling, how can one person manipulate the whole population? The issue is now coming up, and we say if you are a leader, you are accountable to us. But now, but we can't. We need to come up with a big voice. We need to identify newspapers which are read in all of Africa, and then we cause a discussion. We can even form a WhatsApp group where we can begin discussing these issues across Africa, so that this revolution takes place in our time. I wish we would have people who are thinking like me, and we start this discussion, so that we stop the serious thing of saying, you are crossing the border, your people are dying because of the interests of one person. So we need really to open these borders, and me, I would go to DRC to look for my relatives. Because some of my relatives are in DRC, I can't know them. But if the border is open, I'll go there and look for them and say, hey, I can go to Rwanda. People shy away when they are saying that all people from Western Uganda, they are Rwanda. What is wrong with that? Because at one time we are the same. If people are saying that, for example, was a Sudanese, what is wrong with that? Because we are the same people. Those people of West Nile, some of them their relatives are in Sudan, others in Uganda. We are the same. So if a person is calling you a Sudanese, why should you become angry that they call you a Sudanese? Well, because we are the same people.
Yes, Robert, you're bringing in a very, very interesting discussion, because the people of Koboko actually have relatives in South Sudan and in Congo. Because the Kakwa community actually, I think, cuts across there. South Sudan, Uganda, and Congo. Just like, of course, the people in Kisoro, as you put it. You find you have relatives in Congo, you also have relatives in Rwanda. And that can only work out if we can demystify the borders. But, of course, this is not the first discussion. We've been in a number of discussions. The Pan-African Congresses, the Pan-African conferences, there have been Pan-African initiatives of actually making sure that these borders are demystified.
There's even Pan-African Parliament.
Yes, actually even have a Pan-African Parliament.
Without forming a WhatsApp group.
Yes. At the end of the day,
yes.
Why all these groupings are failing? We are leaving them to politicians. And the politicians are using their selfish motives of control. I had rather we start from the economic point of view. You see, when I was born, I didn't have beards. I am starting to see gray hair. I'm getting old. That means there has been a process to make me what I am. If we have economic integration, and a meaningful economic integration that has come through a well-channeled process, there is no way how I am going, if I have a business in Kenya, how anybody is going to interfere with my business and I don't rise. That's why today, the wananchi, you talked about one person against the wananchi, people have laid back. Those who should be coming up have been given squeaks to keep leaking. They cannot dare spit the squeaks.
They cannot speak because the mouth is busy.
The mouth is busy. They say the mouth that is eating does not talk.
Yeah.
That's what the Baganda say. When you're eating, don't talk. They are busy eating and eating themselves in the long run. And those who are not eating have been left so powerless that they cannot even be heard. And that's why the African presidents, you're saying, they're ruling with a lot of impunity. Now, the business community has a lot to play. Why? When there is a war in South Sudan, let's be more practical right now, and Ugandan traders are hurting the most. They're the people who rise up and say, Minister, go and meet the minister, your counterpart in South Sudan. Mr. President, people are saying, why is the president going to build roads in
DR Congo?
He's not going to be driving. He's not a driver, a rally driver. He's doing it for the sake of business. And when you have a business interest, you protect it generously. That's why we are saying, because of at the level which Uganda is at, most people who have interest in Uganda had rather not see any war coming up. They must protect their business interests. If we leave these things to politicians, we are going to get messed up, because the African Union wants to run before even they crawl. And because they want to run before they crawl, they are making several mistakes. These groupings that are coming up, spearheaded by politicians, they're not being spearheaded in good faith. That's just because they want to go and help you as a person. It's about who is going to become the next president of the East African community. That's the key question. If we get the political integration, who will become the next president, but not who is going to have goods move from one point to another, how are we going to have those services aligned together? If you go to South Sudan to do business in South Sudan, they are looking at you as a Kawaji. They are looking at you as a stranger. These are Ugandans who are fighting. You have not been able to do business, but I've brought business to you. But you're fighting me because I am from Uganda. What does that mean?
But at the same time,
thank you very much. Yes, Mtuta, let's look at, of course, still on the issue of demystifying the borders. He's bringing in the European Union model of that is business, and the other one was in for the American model, that is the political the integration, so that we can demystify the borders. But still, even in trying to demystify our borders, let's look at our currencies. They are even next door here in Tanzania. You may find it hard to use Ugandan shillings. And the reverse is also actually true. But you find that in each and every African country, people are very comfortable with the dollar. The money that is actually, that comes thousands of miles to Africa, but everyone is very comfortable with it. So why don't we also maybe start with those simple things that perhaps we can say, we can use the South African rand, we can use as the Nigerian naira, and we say, well, let us adopt this as the continental currency, so that wherever it is, yes, one is good to go to use it to purchase whatever goods they want to.
Yeah, of course, but also the same point that was going to come to, given his submission, that you need to have a corporation spearheaded by out of politics. Now, that is going to happen only on two conditions. The first condition is that the systems that upon which that corporation is built are founded and strong. And the second thing is that we have people who even understand what they are doing in that aspect. Because we have had people who, we're talking about Sudan, you know, Kenyans, when they were in Sudan, they have built up hotels, they have put up banks, insurance companies, and they're doing big business there. Now, Ugandans who are in Sudan were selling tomatoes, eggs, beer, and that kind of stuff. So
even grasshoppers.
Exactly. so you're also looking at the type of business that we are doing at a given time in these particular places. But also, if you are going to do a sustainable business, then you need policy. And this policy framework is much as may be generated by the business community, but it will need leaders who will be able to pass that legislation that will be able to support that business. So we may, as of now, and even in the nearby future, not be able to completely run away from politics. But that will mean that we, as the business community, as the other members of the community, back to his point, need to look at leaders who are going to be able to help us to achieve what we need to achieve. Now, this comes to a point of when we are electing our people, who are we electing and why are we electing them? The Americas he talked about, and the European Union we are talking about, people are voted because of interests. There is the party interest, but there are also other interests where you find people of a particular interest saying, no, for us we are going to contribute, our contribution is to support this person because he's going to push for the environment as his party. Or we want to push this person because he has a business interest and is going to support our interests. When you go back to your voters in Kisoro and my voters in Mbale, where people are being voted after being given waragi or some money to vote. Exactly. Now, those are some of the areas. Now, once that happens, then you are not going to avoid getting leaders who sometimes are going to be a problem. Now, and that's why we are saying that maybe the leaders are not a problem. It is we who are supposed to be answerable to who are a problem. Because if you voted a person against no interest, and what you want him to do things
against the waragi interest.
Exactly. In fact, to the extent we have seen some of them say, for you, since the time you voted for you, you are not coming back to sit with us as you used to, because he has to come back and sit in the waragi company with his voters.
Maybe on that issue of interests. You see why I go back to politicians. Politicians make laws. There is the Parliamentary Elections Act, there is the Presidential Elections Act, where a candidate...
They make and implement, actually.
Yes, they make and implement. Yes. For instance, if you are found to be bribing people, your candidature should be even cancelled. But you see, because it benefits them, they are the people who have money, and they are looking for an opportunity to dish out the money. So, on paper, there is a law, but they are not implementing it for their selfish interests. No, it is important that the people of Uganda and the people of Africa come to realize, and that time is going to come to realize that anything done in public interest should be of a major concern to them, because they are the public. At the end of the day, when these blasts went off the other day, I saw the wananchi running helter-skelter everywhere. They were running everywhere. Reason? No policeman was even there to guide them. But the big people, they were being guided. The public must understand, whether it is in Congo, whether it is in Kenya, anywhere in Africa. When the Sudan was being divided between South Sudan and the Sudan, it was not being done for the benefit of the people of Sudan. It was to accommodate the warring parties. That's why up to now, the big people in leadership are benefiting as against the wananchi. When you go to Ethiopia, where there is a fight between Tigray and the rest of Ethiopia, they want to separate. These are serious selfish, because if you look at it, the people of Tigray had been in leadership from around 1981. Ruling people with impunity, a corrupt system. When Abiy comes in, he says, I want to unify Ethiopia. They cannot take it because they see that the grounds upon which they have been surviving, it is being tampered with.
Yes, but also you see good intentions are as harmful as bad ones if they lack understanding.
Yeah, because you remember the man in Zambia who did all the infrastructure.
Yeah, and then was thrown
because people are not getting money.
Even in Ghana.
Yeah.
So you could have good intentions, but as long as the good intentions are not understood, then they are
good intentions have fruits.
Yes, no, good intentions
have fruits.
As long as they are not understood. They are as harmful as bad ones.
Because we have also seen a situation where leaders have come up with good intentions, and like you said, once they are misunderstood,
yes, they are as harmful as
Kwame Nkrumah has had all these good intentions, but you know they were not even allowed to do that. But the most important thing for me, like I was saying, is that Africa needs to build not only capacity, but also institutions that will enable us to get to the next level. Because today we are crying about the leaders, blah, blah, but the leaders are not going to be here forever. And of course, they have also been here for all this time. But the most important thing is that we need, as Africa, to build systems and institutions that will be able to deliver the interests of the people. I agree with the people who say, we talked about the African Union and the African Parliament, the Pan-African Parliament. But I agree with those who suggest that besides the parliament that is elected from the respective countries, maybe we need to have another level of discussion. Because what is discussed in the heads of state meeting or at the parliament are extensions of what is discussed in those countries, in the smaller countries of Africa. That maybe we need to have another forum which will accommodate even the non-state actors that he's talking about. That some of these discussions that cannot be necessarily come from the mainstream politics can also be accommodated, because if the whole chairman of the African Union can close borders, then what is the information? What informs that decision? That maybe if there were other alternative areas and forums of discussion, maybe some of these discussions could be accommodated there. But also we also need to look at the background, the history, when we are talking about the Africa unity. We have up to now still struggling with the Francophone. And
we have the Francophone, we have the Anglophone, and we have the Portuguese Africa.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
We have to
actually even we have the Arab Africa.
The Arab Africa also. Yes. Now we have to overgo all those, but at the same time we also have to look at the religious factor on how that can also be talking about the borders. We are talking about the politically created borders, but there are also other smaller borders that have been created within Africa that have affected the unification of Africa. So if Africa is to move to the next level, then we need to move at maybe a slower pace, speed, but also looking at generally the life and social aspects of the rest of Africa and the rest of the
world. Thank you very much. I think there's no way we can run away from the politics. Just like Nkrumah did say it, that get first your politics right and the rest will follow, or seek first the political kingdom and the rest will follow.
How wrong will that
yes, be? Because whatever it takes, but that is the right way. As long as the politicians, the political class is not into this, because ideally they are the planners. They are the people who are going to have this. They can fail, they can make or break African unity. So there is no way we can say, because when it comes to the people, the African people are ready to integrate, and this is showed at the level of integration. For example, if a Nigerian came here, within a year or two they have integrated, they have married around, and they are now Ugandans. If you find yourself in Ivory Coast, 1 year or two, you already integrate. So the Africans, socially, we are always there to integrate, because we also have a system of identifying our clan system. The clans, the groupings, the tribes. So you find that they are always interlinked, and therefore there is already enough social apparatus and infrastructure for us to integrate. But now the question is the politics. It is the politics that is also making us fall apart. But again, we also have to see that they say when wisdom yields no fruits, to be wise is to suffer. Everybody who has told that line, they've actually faced problems. We had Nkrumah, got problems. We had Gaddafi, got problems. Now Abiy Ahmed was trying to unite the seat of African Union. So you see really what now is actually happening. So yes, Robert, how do we get our politics, because you are in for the political unification, which is also right. How do we get our politics right so that we can dismantle these borders?
Yes, as I did mention, I think you are right, we need the politics right, because without politics we can't unite. I think now what we need to do, it is quite ambitious, but what we need to do is, for example, to look at the politics the way they are. Like for example, next year Kenya has elections. and we talk to the candidates to see if they can include that aspect in their manifesto, so that we begin influencing the leaders who are going for presidential seats to put their manifesto of these issues of uniting Africa. Because if you don't have it in your manifesto, there is no way you are going to implement that. So I agree with you, the politics is very important. We can't do it without politics. So we need to get it right, the politics of Africa. And then we, as I said, we need to identify those people who can bring sanity in Africa. Like I think this year, when the African Parliament, when the West Africans, you know, they have been taking the seats for the speaker. And I think someone from Mali wanted it to be a speaker, and I saw the South African, I think the SADC, they stood up in arms, they said, no, you cannot manipulate this. And there was I liked that, if you saw that clip. And the elections never took place. So we need people to do activism the way this young man in South Africa is doing. So that now if we have very many leaders who are doing what? If you are doing something and then you can be, people can tell you that what we are doing is not good. So what we need to do is to do the politics, but also there are good initiatives. For example, the African Union. We are talking about that African Parliament, which is a good platform, but we have other good things they have passed, like the African Mining Vision, where they want transparency and accountability in mining. And then we have the African Human Rights, what? Is this Charter? Now, for example, can we look at that Charter critically? And because the African head of states they are saying, if you take a government by a coup, they don't recognize you. But it should go beyond that. For example, can we say that if the human rights condition in a certain country are not good, and there is a good report.
They are seriously wanted.
Yes, and there is a good report. Can you be suspended because, for example, you have killed your citizens, even when you are a president? And the African Union, they bring their experts, they do their own reports. They say, now, if you have serious human rights violation in your country, you can be suspended. Don't look at only people who want to take power by force. Look at also how the leaders are treating their own people at home. So I think what we need to do is to get first the politics right, and also use the current initiatives which are good, and we see how to strengthen them so that we can move forward. Otherwise, if we are interested, we need to begin talking to people, and now it is unfortunate that Uhuru is going after speaking that statement. Maybe if he was still in office, we would still engage him. But we hope that another president who will come in the next president of Kenya will also be speaking the way Uhuru is speaking, so that we can get a starting point. So what we need, you are talking of the currency. For example, why can't we begin by having one currency in Africa?
No, of course, adopting one, we can think of the South African rand and or the naira, just like we have the dollar dominating. We can also think of having, look here, we can maybe start with a rand or start with the naira.
Yeah, I'm told, for example, the francophones, those countries which were colonized by
France.
By France. Their central bank is like still in France. There is some level of control. But if we are working together, that control that they are having, we could strengthen the bank, the African Development Bank. We put in more money to build these cross-border infrastructures. If, for example, we know we can have a road that is crossing from Cairo to South Africa, we get our own money from the African Development Bank, we build it. If we need a railway to move from East Africa to West Africa, we get our own money and we build it. If we need to control our resources like Lake Victoria, we have enough resources to work together. If we need to control, to protect the River Nile, the River Congo, these cross-border resources, we work together and control them. Now, for example, these small conflicts in Ethiopia, it would have been a matter of African Union meeting and say, what is the problem in Ethiopia? And the next day the fighting stops. So the reason why we are having these coups, the coups that were there in 1960s and 70s coming, is because the citizens...
Actually, the ghost of the coups is now...
Yes, the citizens are losing patience, especially from the African Union. Because the African Union seems to be only protecting leaders, and it does not look at human rights violations. And now, even if it were me, I wouldn't be respecting the African Union position. Like what happened recently, this West African country where it's called?
Guinea-Conakry.
Yes, Guinea, where the ECOWAS was saying that please go, you stage the coup. Where was ECOWAS when people were dying in big numbers? Why didn't they come to tell the president, please, you president, you don't have money, you don't have to kill your own people because they are rising against you. So we need also to have that kind, the leaders. At the African Union level, that component of human rights needs to be enforced very seriously.
Well, I think Robert. Yes, James. One says that great minds, great people come up with great ideas, and institutions make those ideas last. People like Nkrumah came up with good ideas on the unification of Africa, Nyerere, with building strong regional blocks that will lead us into the eventual integration. Gaddafi saying we need a United States of Africa. Now, how do we build institutions that can actually lead us to that dream?
We are modeling. We are copying from what others have done elsewhere. So I think we shouldn't only copy the hardware. We also need to copy into the software. Like we have been in the past talking when this time of lockdowns and whatever, that we are receiving support in terms of vaccines and the rest from the rest of the world. But how sure are we that these vaccines are good for us as a continent? Do we have the capacity to check what we are being given? In other words, when it comes to surveillance of our own diseases, can our CDC of Africa be able to do that? We are now having issues in Ethiopia. Of course, we have had issues in the Sudan. We have issues in West Africa of these coups and wars and the rumors of wars. Can the African Union come up to say, no, I think this is wrong, this is what we need to do? We have seen the arbitrators in Sudan, for example, when they were looking at people who brokered the current trace of the peace, that the African Union is not there. You can count over UN, you can count over the USA. So where is the African Union? So what we need to do is to have these good ideas that the Union, the African Union has, and the leaders into systems. But I remember again we discussed about the late president of Tanzania, Pombe Magufuli. Magufuli was the one who would go to a region and call the governor there and
the regional commissioners.
Yes, the regional commissioners and ask them, why is this market not having toilets, and sort it there, suspend someone there. And we're saying, that is a good approach, but it needs to be institutionalized so that it is not promoted by one person, but there is a system to be able to monitor and follow up and cause all these punishments if need be. Now, we also having good leaders in Africa who are pushing for particular positions to ensure that the African Union moves faster and accommodates most of these things that we're talking about. But most of the things are being done at individual level. We have seen President Museveni, for example, struggling, trying many things to have the East African community in place. But sometimes you find what Uganda is doing is not what Rwanda is doing, or not Tanzania is doing. And so can we build systems that the machinery that we are running is able to have its own safety chains and stop gaps, that we don't need someone to push it, but it's an automated system. So that is what we need for Africa, that we need to build the systems that will be able to deliver the African aspirations. But if we don't do that, then we are going to allow others to come and do that. And what they are going to be doing is for their own interests. Because
not for our own
yes,
interests.
if US is negotiating for peace in Sudan, it's not negotiating for peace because it loves the people of Sudan so much.
To protect
exactly.
Well, thank you very much. It's all about interests and not that they love the particular people. Now, some say that the African continent, at continental and at regional level, we are not falling short of institutions. We've had institutions. We have the African Union as an institution. We have the East African Community. We have SADC. We have ECOWAS. All those are regional institutions. But how do we empower these so that they are not on the backing dogs, but we can see that they can actually bite? Yes.
Thank you very much. It is, I will still go back to the issue of the economy. When Africa as a continent and the individual countries are economically weak, the institutions that are created will still be weak. African Union is sponsored by European Union, by United States of America,
by China?
By China.
Yes.
Even where they sit, that building was put up by China. He who pays the fruit.
Even in the seat of the ESC in Arusha was built by Germany.
Yes. He who pays the fruit orders the tune. It is about strength of the economy. We talked about the American model. Why Americans came up together, those smaller states, is because they were competing with another bigger nation. We have the power of Russia. How do we...
Actually, the Soviet Union.
The Soviet Union. How do we counter the impact, the financial muscle of the Soviet Union? Let's come up together, plan it together, work together as a group. Are we together? Europe, Britain, France, Germany, there were small setups compared to the threats they are facing. Now, individually as nations, if you go to a negotiation table, when your hands are dirty, you're not going to contribute because all the time you're hiding your what? Your hands. For these institutions to grow and become strong, the collective contribution to the membership of those institutions must be strong. Because if you take a strong Uganda, a strong Kenya, a strong Tanzania, a strong Namibia, to the general setup of the African Union, you have a strong product. But if you take the African, like now we're having the East African community, but you see, for a community to thrive, the people in the different states must be at a certain level of understanding. There must be unanimity. But you go to Congo, you meet a section of people, they are not at the same level of appreciation of things as the people in Uganda are appreciating them. The people in Southern Sudan, they are not yet at the same level. So they are bringing something undesirable to the bigger institution. In Uganda, the police works at least some level. You got South Sudan, police is as if, where if they put a policeman at a roadblock, it means it is as if they have put him to enrich himself. So it is a weakness.
The same case with Congo.
With the Congo.
Yes.
It is a weakness, a dent you're bringing, and you are closing your eye because you want the community to grow and expand. But you're not asking yourself, if a Ugandan who is used to, let's use Kenya, because Kenya is enterprising, much more enterprising in terms of economics and trade. If you bring somebody in Kenya where he goes in one office and all applications and certifications that are necessary for an industry to run, and you take him to South Sudan where they take him to go see this one, you have to see this general, you have to see this one, by the time he comes back, already he is disappointed by the whole system. So let us first work on these individuals. Let us not forget that we have these individual countries called Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, what. Inside, let us first organize ourselves. Before we say the East African community is not organized, how organized are we as a country, as Uganda? Before we say the African Union is not organized, African Union is dependent on foreign aid, Uganda is dependent heavily on foreign aid. You see the supplementary budget that they are passing, they passed it. They passed the supplementary budget. That supplementary budget, where is the money coming from? We have a minister now of loans. He goes and begs, we need the money. So you are putting a burden now on the East African Union. But you see, if for instance we talked about the issues of a similar currency. Currency is determined by the level of economic activity. The Kenyan shilling, one Kenyan shilling is worth 33 Ugandan shillings. Now, by the time you say you create uniformity, you may find that you don't even have money in your pocket to have a Kenyan shilling. But still, for that common currency to apply, it does not require a politician. People in Kabare were using Ugandan francs. In fact, if you had a Ugandan franc, you would still go in a shop and do business. Why? Because it is a medium of exchange. And that medium of exchange does not require a politician to come and speak. What I require, you may think that I'm being harsh to politicians. I want politicians who have something to lose. Most Ugandan politicians have nothing to protect and have nothing to lose.
Well, thank you very much, because at times somebody says, especially P.L. Lumumba, that when it is time for us to elect, we actually don't look at people as stakeholders in our society. We just look at people either because we are related to them in one way or the other, or perhaps we've been stealing together, we've been doing this. But you don't look at somebody who really has a stake in that society and is willing to protect it. Yes, I can see time is not our best allies. Yes, Robert.
Yes.
In a minute or two, your parting shot.
Yes, my parting shot is on regional blocs. I think they are not working. Because if we have a regional bloc of East Africa, which is comprised of 6-7 countries, and if there is, for example, a conflict between the two countries, now the other countries also have to stake in our sides. So you find that if there is a problem between Rwanda and Uganda, that problem cannot be solved by the East African community, because they don't have quorum to meet and discuss it and make a resolution. But if they were at the African Union level, where, for example, they say, if you continue doing this, we are isolating you, we are putting embargo on you. You know what it means that you cannot trade with all Africa. Do you survive? Because it is bigger. But with East Africa, you can say, no, I'm going to cross the borders and I get things.
Do our leaders care about embargoes? You saw DC Dumboy saying he doesn't care about the sanctions, because actually AU was saying, well, we're going to put embargoes and sanctions on you. And he said he doesn't care. So at the end of the day, it is the money.
Do you know that the president of the current president of Guinea, is it Guinea Conakry?
Yeah.
He had support. For example, George Weah from which country is that?
Liberia.
Yes, the president of Liberia was supporting him. So even in ECOWAS, they were not. They were not together. So that's why they cannot make a decision even at ECOWAS level and say we are going to remove you. Because some presidents in the ECOWAS were saying, yeah, this gentleman did what is right, and because the other president was against anti-people. So for me, what I see that works now is to have a voice as Africa, not a voice as regional blocs, which has not worked for the last 50 years. We need to come together and forge a way forward. And for example, cause referendums. In each countries, if, for example, we have a voice, let's say, if the presidents think that they want to implement something, let them go back to their homes and do referendums the way the United Kingdom did when they wanted to get out of the European Union. We say, for example, we want to remove borders. Then the presidents go back to their homes and they carry out referendums. So now it becomes the will of the people. It has been a habit for presidents to agree on our behalf, even they have not consulted us. Well, that's why those things don't take shape. We don't take you accountable for your words because you have not consulted. But if, for example, you have something in your manifesto and you have not implemented it, next time we are standing, we say, Mr. President, you said you want to implement this, you have not implemented. But we cannot hold them accountable because they make a decision without consulting us.
Well, thank you very much, Council Robert Tumwesde. Now let's go to Stephen. Stephen, of course, I can see times not our best ally, but I want to draw your attention to the southern part of Africa.
Yes, please.
Because in the southern part of Africa, you will actually remain a foreigner, your child will also remain a foreigner, and your grandchild a foreigner if you don't come from that part of the country. That even when Africans move to that part of the continent, perhaps even with their families, it's not, their system is actually too rigid that it does not accommodate. And I think that is now the first step. Like, for example, look at Uganda. Uganda is being looked at as a center of African integration. That people come in here as refugees, 2-3 years down the road, they own land, and they are doing business like any other person, yes.
It is very important that when you're talking about South Africa,
Southern Africa.
The Southern Africa,
not South Africa,
but I'll still draw you closely to South Africa being a center. Maybe we can talk about Zimbabwe and other parts of that. Those are countries which for a long time they had been ruled under apartheid. The black man in South Africa faced a lot of injustices, and the injustice they faced at that particular time, they still face them now, even when they are under ANC and now EF. Is it EF, Economic Freedom Party, that is also coming up? They hold a lot of anger, ill feelings against the whole world. Not just against the blacks themselves, like you go or any other foreigner, but everything that happened in their lives, they sit with a second thought. But that said, it is not to mean that if they went through whatever they went through, everyone is an enemy to them. However, it is important that even as they conduct business, there are parts of, like now in Zimbabwe, because of it is I think in 1980 when they got independence, the effects of land distribution still stand out together. So they are held up in their small circles of thoughts of land distribution, land economic disempowerment, that they see anyone who comes in as, oh, he has also come to take what we have. They are starting to feel the economic freedom. And because they're starting to feel that economic freedom, they don't expect anyone to come and interfere with what they have. But that is wrong, because there is no country in this world which has developed itself. There's what we call foreign direct investment. Foreigners are coming in Africa, just like there are Africans who are investing in their economies. We have Dangote. Who doesn't know Dangote, that Nigerian man? His wealth, the chunk of his wealth, is not mostly in Africa. It is in those countries. But you see, it requires organization, both at the national level and at individual level.
Thank you very much. Yes, James, your parting shot. What ought to be done so that we can demystify the borders, actually the colonial borders?
What is happening today was exactly what the colonialists wanted, because they knew that after they leave, these borders are going to create friction within the people. They're also going to create friction between the leaders and their people, and it's going to create friction within the wider society of the black people, so that when you go to their countries, you will be marginalized, you will be segregated, both at home but also out there. And yet for them, they can easily come here, work freely, and we even welcome them in terms of investors and tourists. But that now means that we as Africans need to up our game, that we need to have leaders who are focused, who put it rightly, that other than working together, we are now competing against each other. And this is what the framework, the frame needed to do, that the Africans will be competing amongst themselves, because then those who sell them arms will be able to get the market, and those who want to give them loans will be able to give them money, and then they will benefit. But now what Africans need to do is, once we are working together, most of these bottlenecks will be resolved. You will not have Sudan or Egypt and Ethiopia fighting over the Nile and building the dam, because then that will be a facility that is going to support all of us. And these takeovers and these wars will stop. because then Africa will be more united. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a journey to walk, but I think leaders need to focus and work towards that. They may not be able to achieve it in their time in office, but I think every leader will be proud to see that happen even when they have left office. So for us as Africans, we need to work towards that, and also need to have systems that can fit into that framework that will be able to support our leaders in trying to push for that. Because if you need to have a business community that my brother here was talking about, you need also to have an informed business community. If you want to have responsible leaders, then you also need to have informed leaders, so that even when they're discussing, when they're taking decisions, they have what to lose. But a leader who is not informed, a businessman who is not informed, is as dangerous as any person. So as we go for leaders, as we do the business, even in all our social sectors, we need to look at people who are informed and who have something to lose should what they are doing fail. I think to me that's what is more important.
Well, I must thank you, Ndugu James Mututa, and I also must thank you, Council Stephen Navy, and also from FDC. Then also environmentalist and lawyer, that is Robert Mwesije, and also from EPU, for really coming to join the Pan-African discussion this Friday as we look at demystifying the colonial borders. Amanda Akola Mazima saying bye-bye.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
It's Freaky Friday from Airtel. Buy or gift. Buy or give.
Get freaky too! Dial star 149 star 10 hash to load a Freaky Friday bundle for you to enjoy the best offers on voice and data.
To buy a bundle for friends and family, dial star 149 star 10 star 5 hash. Freaky Friday with Airtel. Buy or gift a bundle today. Dial star 149 star 10 hash to get started. Airtel, the smartphone network.